Hannah had been calling Taehyung incessantly for the past week, but he had been ignoring her calls. He couldn't bring himself to face her after their messy divorce 6 years ago. But something inside him made him pick up the call this time. Hannah, what do you want? Taehyung's voice was cold and distant. I am in front of your house, Taehyung. Hannah's voice was shaky and filled with emotion. Please, just talk to me one last time. Before she could say anything else, Taehyung heard a loud screech followed by a sickening thud. His heart stopped as he heard Hannah's scream cut short. The phone slipped from his hand as he realized what had happened. Without thinking, Taehyung ran outside of his house, his feet pounding against the pavement barefoot. Van watched him, her heart racing with fear and worry. Taehyung, what happened? She called, but it was late. He had already went out of the house. Van followed him, running behind, confused. When they reached the street, Taehyung's worst fears were realized. Hannah lay on the ground, her body twisted at an unnatural angle, blood pooling out of her head. Her eyes were half open, looking directly at He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands shaking as he reached out to touch her. Hannah, can you hear me? Taehyung's voice was filled with desperation and anguish. Vine stood back, her hands covering her mouth in shock and horror, her eyes wide as she watched the scene unfold before her. Hannah, please wake up. Taehyung's voice cracked with emotion as he gently cradled her head in his hands. Hannah's eyes fluttered open, pain and struggle to keep herself conscious itched on her face. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Don't speak, Hannah. Taehyung's voice was thick with tears. Just hold on, help is coming. Wan knelt down beside them, her hands trembling as she tried to comfort both Taehyung and Hannah. We need to get her to the hospital, Taehyung. She needs medical attention. Taehyung nodded, his mind racing with fear and guilt. He gently lifted Hannah into his arms. Ignoring the pain in his heart as he felt her body limp against him. Van quickly called for help as Taehyung carried Hannah towards their car. With some strangers' help, they managed to lay Hannah in the back seat, Taehyung holding her hand tightly as they sped towards the hospital. As they waited in the emergency room, Taehyung paced back and forth, his heart heavy with regret and sorrow. Van sat beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder in a silent gesture of support. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor finally emerged from the operating room. Taehyung's heart skipped a beat as he looked at doctor's expression. She is out of danger. The doctor's voice was gentle. She'll stay in the hospital for 2 weeks before she gets completely okay. Tears streamed down Taehyung's face as he sank to his knees in relief, thanking God. As Wayan watched Taehyung sit on his knees crying for Hana, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over her. She felt a pang of insecurity creeping into her heart, overshadowing the relief she felt at Hana's recovery. Seeing them together now in this vulnerable moment stirred up a whirlwind of insecurities within her. She couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy that gnawed at her. wondering if she could ever measure up to the bond that Taehyung and Hana had shared. Van tried to push away these insecurities, reminding herself that Taehyung had chosen her, that he had committed to building a life with her. But the doubts lingered, festering in the corners of her mind like a persistent shadow. Knowing how she was only his wife on paper and there were no feelings in his heart for her. He was just forced to live with her as he had no other option. These thoughts kept eating her from the inside. The next day, as Wayan came back to the hospital to check on Hana after sending Subin school, she found her on the bed laying silently. Wayan smiled at her a little, placing some fruits beside her on the side table. How are you feeling, Miss Hana? Hana nodded. Better. That's great. You'll be fine like before in no time. Wine gave her a reassuring smile. Yeah, thanks for the fruits though, Hannah said and gave her a little smile. No problem, I'll come to visit again. You don't have to worry about work, I'll handle it. Hannah sighed, nodding her head. You should sleep for some time now. The nurse will give these to you in the lunch, Van said, pointing at the fruits. She took her bag and stood up. As she turned to leave, Hannah suddenly held the strap of her bag. I won, Vayan. Maite chose me, even after so much time. We stayed away for 6 years, but it took a moment to come close. There is no name of this relationship, but the bond is same as before, Hannah said, her voice weak but filled with confidence. Vian, who was still standing with her back facing Hannah, tightened her grip on her bag, closing her eyes and feeling her heart sink. She turned to look at Hannah. There's still nothing decided yet. The truth is, he is still my husband, Miss Hannah. I won't say anything until he accepts it himself. Vine said, snatching her bag away from Hannah's grip and walking out of the hospital room hurriedly. As days turned into weeks and Hannah slowly recovered from her injuries, Vine found herself withdrawing into herself more and more. She struggled to voice her fears and insecurities through Taehyung, afraid of being perceived as weak or irrational. At night, Subin whined, standing beside Ryan, who was cutting vegetables for dinner. It's capsicum, not caspicum, she said, ruffling his hair. He replied, grossed out, making a face, causing Ryan to look at him with narrowed eyes. Don't do this, you. Capsicum is a royal vegetable eaten by kings only, Ryan said in an exaggerated manner, to which Subin only scrunched his nose. Then feed it to some king only. Ryan raised one of her eyebrows. Your answers are always ready, aren't they? Before Subin could reply, they both heard someone whistling. Hertz turned in the sound's direction only to see Taehyung walking towards them with his hands in his pocket. Little Subin nudged Ryan, who leaned in to hear what he wanted to say. King is coming. Ryan glanced at her son with a so done expression before looking at Taehyung again, who cleared his throat. Go ahead, take a good look, he said, running a hand through his hair in style. I know what you two are thinking. I can clearly see it in your eyes that you have never seen a handsome man like me in all of Seoul, right? He wiggled his eyebrows with a smirk. That is right, but what do you think you are doing dressed up like this at night? He scoffed. Ryan, When this capsicum got cut, it understood that I, the great Taehyung, will never have it as a dish. I see. This capsicum also knows that the great Taehyung will have to have it after changing clothes. Ryan smiled sarcastically, making Subin giggle. Oh, Ryan, change. Change is what we need. Therefore, tomorrow we are going on a vacation. He dropped the bomb. Both the mother and son duo went, what? Yes, we are going to Singapore for vacation. Tomorrow evening, I've booked the flight, which means no capsicum, no carrots for 2 weeks. Only good food, Taehyung said, and Subin squealed in excitement. Little Subin ran to his room after hugging his dad. What is this, Taehyung? There's so much packing and preparing to do, and you didn't even tell me. She got shushed by Taehyung as he placed his finger on her lips. It will be all done in no time. And I wanted to give you a surprise. These past few weeks have been very stressful for you, so a little fun won't hurt, right? Ryan sighed, removing his finger. Right. Great, then we are going on a vacation. Just you, me, and Subin. They smiled softly. Yeah, but you'll still have to eat capsicum for dinner, you know. He face palmed himself, forgetting about it.